Shalom, when the stuff source but giving no praise to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushua, Bashem, Kadash, the double honors to the apostles of great Most and honors you brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name of whom the world ignorant calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh, his real name is Yahweh, Son's true name is Yahushua, and when we pray Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, meaning in, I mean that, and Shem, meaning names Yahweh, and the name of Yahushua. Real quick, just wanted to get into this as a thought that I was having, yesterday. So I could do a video on this. But in general, it's something that, you speak to people in the world, right? Regardless what the circumstances is, right, for the conversation. But when the conversation of like nukes come up, they always say, oh, no one would ever be crazy enough or stupid enough to, to basically shoot missiles. Okay, right. I remember I was doing a video with a bro the other day, right, and one of the things that kind of came to mind was the idea of really when you read Ezekiel the 38th chapter, the 10th verse, which I might read into all of this, right? It's the Lord is the one that's going to put the spirit in these people to shoot these missiles, because it is actually kind of mad, right? Which is ironic because that's the term for it is as an acronym, it stands for mutually assured destruction, right? It is a doctrine of military strategy and national security policy which posits, right? Which posit means assume a fact put forward as a basis of argument, which posits that a full-scale use of nuclear weapons by an attacker on a nuclear-armed defender with second strike capabilities would result in complete annihilation of both the attacker and the defender. And this is Esau. Like, why would you create like weapons like this? You know what I'm saying? It's like you when you read it out loud, it just shows you that he's just different. Let's get a few precepts, right? Habakkuk 2 and 4, we can load that up. We can also load up Psalm 140. Right, load up Revelation 6 and 4. Right, he's not normal, right? He says Habakkuk 2 and 4, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, right? In this part of the verse, referring to these Edomites, like he ain't right. Like why would you create weapons where, like, if you shoot it, both of you are gone? Why would you do that? We just read it, right? It says, would result in the complete annihilation of both the attacker and the defender. Like, why the F would you create weapons like that, right? But to finish off the verse, right? But the just shall live by his faith, right? And we have faith that the Lord is going to deliver us from, this impending destruction, right? Because when we read the scriptures, we understand that the destruction is for the wicked, right? This is, I believe, it's Sirach, Second Ezra's. Yep, Sirach 40, and I'll start from 9. It says, death and bloodshed, strife and sword, calamities, famine, tribulation, and the scourge. These things were created for the wicked, and for their sakes came the flood. So the destruction, all the pain and suffering that's going to come, to this world, right? It's because of wickedness, right? In fact, we can grab that in Second Ezra's as well. Right, right. It's the Second Ezra 15. Similarly, right. So it says, if I read into it, right, from the top, it says, "Behold, speak down the ears of my people the words of prophecy." Right. So some of the apostles down, we're the ones speaking the truth. We're the ones coming out and being like, "Yo, this is what's going to happen," and it's through the Spirit, right? Not of us at all, right? Because the Lord has opened up our eyes to be able to see and put, these different pieces together, because people in the world, once again, they can see that things aren't right, but they ultimately have no answer. Right? You hear Professor Zhang, or he's the top, the hot commentator at the moment, right? Your Scott Ritter, this and the other, like, you've got all of these different individuals that are coming out, basically talking these things, but they can't piece it together. They can't piece it all together, right? Only the prophets can, right? And what's beautiful is we're watching prophecy unfold before our eyes, right? It goes on to say, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord. So once again, when we speak, we're not speaking of ourselves. We're speaking the words of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, It goes on to say in verse 2, right? It says, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true, right? And, modern way we do this by way of these videos, these shows, right? It goes on to say, it says, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee, right? Because you get a lot of incredulity means disbelief, right? So, in fact, let's jump to that, right, real quick. This is Romans 3:3. Right, for what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect? The Most High forbid. Yea, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. As it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged. Right, so the Lord is the one that is going to be right when all is said and done. So if people don't believe, that's on them, innit? See what precepts we have here. So 2 Thessalonians 2, right, verse 10 says, and with all deceivableness and unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause the Most High shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So, hey, if you don't believe, you want to carry on in sin and wickedness, that's on you. Right, it says, and because go nicely segue back to 2 Ezra 15:4, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the worlds, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Right, so wickedness has exceedingly polluted the earth, right, which is why this destruction is coming, right, and but as we just read in Sirach, right, the elect to the Lord are going to be protected from that, right? So we read this, right? Read what we had wanted here, right? So he ain't right. Once again, we'll go and get those other precepts, but when you say it out loud, right, would result in the complete annihilation of both the attacker and the defender. And this is the thing about these weapons, because they don't just stop there, right? They then spread the contamination, the radiation, right, throughout the world. Okay, and you get what's referred to as a nuclear winter as well, where all of the dust that basically covers the heavens. Now that's why we know the Lord's going to do a thing, right? When America's destroyed. Okay, so we read that. So Psalms 140 from the top. So deliver me, O Yahweh, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man. Right. Right. So this is H2 555. Right. Hamas. Right. Violence by implication, wrong by metonymy, unjust. Damage, false, injustice, oppressor, unrighteous, violence, violent, wrong. Right. Cruelty and justice. Because when you're gonna unleash a weapon that just indiscriminately wipes everything out, that's just pure violence. Okay, this is verse 2, which imagine mischiefs in their heart continually are they gathered together for war, right? And it's because they continue gathered together for war that they're like, wait, if you got this weapon, that means I need to have this weapon, right? So you don't use it on me. We ain't going to have need for these weapons in the kingdom. In fact, when you read Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, it speaks that we're going to get rid of all of these weapons, right? I believe as Ezekiel 39 as well, right? I believe, I'm not going over that in a minute, right? But the point being is like these weapons are so destructive. There's no need for them, okay? Absolutely no need for them, right? But this is the devil that we're working with here. Right, so let's jump over to Revelation 6:4. What we wanted, right? It says, and there went out another horse that was red, right? Red representing Edom, right? Esau is Edom. It says, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword, and that ultimate great sword is that MOT. Is that ICBM nuclear missile, right? See if we can jump into the direct precept here. No, not here. So let's just jump to it direct. Right, it says Zechariah 14:12. Right, it says, and this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord Yahweh will smite all the people that are fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Right, so what we're reading here is the description of what nuclear weaponry does to you. It just makes you melt away, just right. depiction of that being what Terminator 2, right, with Sarah Connor in the playground, right? You basically just see her melt away, okay, and that's what these weapons do, and it's what we're reading here, right? So let's jump into this, right? Which I'm gonna read into this as well, right? It's Ezekiel 38. I'm gonna start from the top. It says, "And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, right, son of man, set thy face against Gog, right, the land of Magog, right, which when you look at ancient maps, right, the land that basically compasses that today, right, is Russia, right? So this is referring to Russia. It says the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, thus saith the Lord, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, because Russia still represents the Edomite nation, right? Right, so yeah, the Lord is gonna use them, but the Lord ain't with the Russians. The Lord ain't with the Americans. They ain't with the Iranians. Ain't with the Chinese, right? The Lord is with the Israelites, right? The true children of Israel, right? It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and will bring thee forth, and all thine army and horses, and let me read that again. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I'll bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, right? Let me read this. I don't know if that came out. That was mad, but I'm not near a train. Like, that's crazy how loud that was. But it says, so let's break that down, right? So now turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, right? Because Russia changed, after what was it? After the end of the Cold War, Russia kind of started looking weak, right? But what you've been seeing via Putin is Russia turning back into that Soviet era mentality, right? That position of power, right? So that's what I'll bring you back into that mentality, right? It says, and all that army, horses and horsemen, all of them were clothed with all sorts of armor, right? Even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So when you look at Russian military hardware, right, and how what their philosophy is in contrast to the Americans just print money, so then they end up spending a ton on their on their military, right? But these times it's like they didn't need to spend that much. So there is this, which not to say America ain't got stuff. America's got stuff, right? They probably don't really want to use it right now in Iran, but we know they got stuff. But the point being is just like, so does Russia, so does China, right? So but you're basically seeing how the S-400s, right, the S series, right, air defense system that Russia has, right? It's Russia's given it to a number of their own allies, right? It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou God unto them, right? Which is why, for instance, you just had one of the Iranian, I think it was Iranian foreign minister, right, just end up in Russia, right? Was just was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was yesterday, right? Went to Russia, right, to have a quote conversation, right? And we know that Russia will have been helping Iran during this period of time. Okay, so that's what you're seeing, Russia helping her allies, right? So verse 8 says, after many days thou shalt be visited, in the latter years thou shalt come to the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have always been waste, but it is brought forth out the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them, right? These are brought back from the sword, because America's never been attacked, right, among the mountains of Israel, the region of Israel, and right, shall dwell safely, right? The real Israelites, when we return back to that land, right, we'll live in peace, right? You can look, what is it, and they shall dwell, and none shall make them afraid. And you just do a word search for that. You see different, I think there's like 8 different accounts where it basically says those words, right? 7 or 8 different accounts, right? Verse 9 says, and thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and people with thee, right? The different military men, that's what those bands refer to, right? It says, thus saith the Lord power. It says, it shall come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, right? Right, and shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought, right? And that's it, right? That's the point that I wanted, right? The Lord is going to put the Spirit, right, in these different kings, right, to think that evil thought, right? Let's jump into this. This is Proverbs 21:1, right? It says, the king's heart is in the hand of Yahweh, right? As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will, right? So the Lord's going to put it, because it is mad. It is, once, let's read it again. Let's read it again, right? It is based on the theory, it's a long ass paragraph. I just wanted to jump in the middle, right? Basically said, would result in the complete annihilation of both the attacker and the defender. Complete annihilation, right? It's just stupid, right? But these guys are high IQ, right? Built weapons that can, remove all civilization from the face of the planet Earth, right? Man, this man needs to be taken out of power, right? It goes on to say, as the rivers of water, right? Yeah, did finish that, right? But that's the point, right? The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. So it's the Most High that is going to put the Spirit in them to do these things, right? Isaiah 13:17 says, behold, I'll stir up the Medes, which once again, you look, that's referring to Russia, right? It says, against them, but shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of their womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. Right? So once again, Lord is going to put the Spirit, right, in these Russians, and ultimately in all of, America's allies, right? Let's just finish on these two precepts, right? It says Obadiah 1:7, right? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat that bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding with him, in him, Salakia. Right? So America's allies are eventually going to turn on her, right? Revelation 17:16, right? It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. Right? America's that whore, right? So make her desolate and naked, right? Shall eat her flesh, right? And burn her with fire, right? So that's it. America's going to be completely destroyed, right? And the Lord's going to use her allies to do so, right? And but not just her allies, enemies as well, right? I don't know if you've read it, but it says, it's Jeremiah, right? 50 says, all ye that bend the bow, right? 49 or 50, I forget one of them, but all ye that bend the bow, right? They're going to shoot, right? Spare no arrows, right? Which is referring to them nukes, right? But the Lord is going to put the Spirit in them to do these things, because guess what? It is actually kind of mad. Once again, you think about it, to shoot these missiles, it is actually kind of mad. But hey, that's the will of the Lord, right? We're all here for it. So I'll end on this, because Lord's will be of the elect. We gonna be up in the heavens, right? Watching the destruction, right? So Revelation 15:2, and I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of the Most High. Right, that sea of glass representing the the ozone layer. Right, we're going to be, Lord's will of that number. We're going to be in the chariots watching as America burns. Right, once again, like you see what Terminator 3, right? That scene at the end, you're just seeing, the nukes flying and dropping. Right, that's that. Hey, talk about front row seats. As always, Lord's will that was edifying. Till next time we say Shalom.